Everybody makes mistakes, and it's okay as long as you're learning from them. But what if I were to tell you those mistakes before you made them and taught you how to avoid them? My name is Paris, and I'm the author of the Magi trilogy. Book 1's release date is August 26, 2022, and I absolutely cannot wait for you guys to read it. It's actually coming out in less than 3 months by the time you guys watch this video, which sounds crazy to me. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing 5 beginner writer mistakes and how to avoid them. And the fun but also kind of awkward thing about this video is these are all mistakes that I personally used to make and have learned from them. So I'm not just saying mistakes I've seen, I'm saying mistakes I've actually personally made in the past. One of which I just learned about last night. Common writing mistake number 1 is knowing when, where, and how to start a new paragraph. Let's say that an essay has an accepted paragraph length of 5 to 8 sentences. That's not the case with creative writing. With creative writing, we judge paragraphs not based on the length or the amount of sentences, we judge it based on the content and who's speaking. So the baseline of this rule is every time the subject changes or a new character begins speaking, you start a new paragraph. Now, if your characters are having, one-word conversations where they say one sentence and then, the other person replies with one word, every single time the speaker changes, a new paragraph begins and ends. Now, this can be a little bit confusing at first, but basically what it does is it avoids confusion. The reason for this is you never want more than one character speaking in a paragraph. When you do that, it's very confusing for your readers. There can be exceptions. I would say really the one main exception for this is if you acknowledge that 2 characters are speaking at once. If that's the case, you may be able to get away with it, but even then, be careful that you don't confuse your readers. On the subject matter, let's say you're describing a tree and a bird flitting past the tree. Whether this description is 2 sentences or 10, it can be 1 paragraph. But when your characters get ambushed, then that's going to be another paragraph. And then when the leader starts talking to the main character, then that's going to be a new paragraph. When the fighting starts, that's a new paragraph, so on and so forth. Every time, the main subject of the paragraph changes, you're going to start a new paragraph. And every time a new person talks, you're going to start a new paragraph. Common writing mistake number 2 is re-narrating your novel at the end. Don't re-narrate. And what I mean by this is, you go through the events of your novel, and then in the final chapter, the epilogue, etc., your characters, sit down and they talk about what happened together, or they explain it to a third party, or your main character is internally reflecting on the events that happened. Don't re-narrate the novel at the end, because if your readers want it retold to them, they're not going to want this re-narration, they're going to want to read the novel again. Exceptions for this, there are some of them. One of them being is if this re-narration or this brief overview is adding more to the story, whether it's adding foreshadowing, it's, breaking some of the tension, etc., you could get away with it. But even then, be careful not to fully re-narrate. If you fully re-narrate every detail in one chapter, it's going to get repetitive, it's going to get boring, your readers aren't going to be interested. Remember, your writing is strong enough on its own to stand as a story without being retold. It's not necessary to retell any part of the story unless it's adding something to it. If you want to foreshadow before book 2, go ahead and do it. Second exception for this is if you want to re-narrate in the second book. And by that what I mean is oftentimes in, a series, book 2 will briefly kind of back up and explain part of what happened to book 1. That's so to refresh your reader when they start the next book, because there's often a break in between. When your reader just finished the story, they don't need that re-narration at the end of book 1. What they need when they need it is at the beginning of book 2. Common writing mistake number 3 is head bouncing. Head bouncing is when you have multiple people narrating at the same time or within the span of a few paragraphs without separating it. The difference between head bouncing and having multiple POVs is that head bouncing is unannounced and confusing, whereas multi-POV is announced. And the way you would announce it is to have, at the beginning of the chapter, when you switch a point of view, you have the character's name. Or if you have multiple people narrating in one chapter, then instead of having your typical paragraph break, you would break off by inserting the character's name into it. However, having multiple POVs in one chapter can easily turn into head bouncing. The general rule is to have no more than 3 different narrators in a chapter. Now, this is not a formal rule anywhere. It's what I'm saying when I've personally read. It gets confusing when you have multiple people in one chapter. So I would cap it off at 3. If you want to have 5 different people narrating, go ahead, but introduce it at different chapters. If it's all within one chapter, it will eventually become jumbled and confusing for your reader. And never do it unannounced. Don't switch POVs without telling your readers that you're switching point of views, otherwise it will get confusing for them. Common writing mistake number 4 is shying away from topics and events that you yourself don't have a lot of personal experience with. A common writing rule of thumb is to write what you know. But what about when you want to write what you don't know? Are you not allowed to write romance because you've never dated someone? Are you not allowed to write fistfights because you've never gotten one outside of the Walmart parking lot? No, you are allowed to write that. And there's 2 ways to really enable this ability. Number 1 is to not write what you have personal life experience with, but to write what you read. I think a great example of this is I have had several male main characters that I have written because of the books I've read growing up. One of my favorite book series is this one right here, the Michael Bay series, which is mainly told from Michael's point of view. I myself might be a girl, but I feel comfortable writing from the point of view of a guy because I've read from guys' point of views before. I've read books where a male author has a male main character, and that taught me how to write from a guy's point of view. I've never personally been in a romantic relationship, but many of the books I've read have had romantic relationships in them, which has enabled me to, I hope, realistically write them. And obviously there's always going to be room for improvement, particularly if it's something you aren't familiar with. But this is where asking others for help can come in. If you have never gotten in a fist fight, but you know somebody who has, you can ask them for advice. Maybe you know your best friend's a wrestler, you can ask them what are some, good fighting moves, etc. You're allowed to write what you don't know when you read what you don't know, when you ask questions about what you don't know, etc. Either that or you can self-insert. Maybe you've never been in a romantic relationship, but how would you feel if a guy bought you some flowers? How would you react to that? You can insert that into your novel. If somebody, insults your main character, how would you react to that insult? So on and so forth. Just because you haven't personally experienced this doesn't mean you can't judge how you would react, and it doesn't mean you can't write it because you haven't experienced it. All you need to do is either research or self-insert. Writing mistake number 5 that I'm not even going to use the word common for, because in truth I did not know this is an issue until this time last night. When I was working on formatting my debut novel, The Magi, I learned that using the tab key to insert your paragraphs is incorrect. The tab key will automatically insert your book by 1/2 inch, and it is what you use when you are writing an essay. When you are creative writing, if you use the tab key, then you're going to have your book indented way too far, because whereas a 1/2 inch indent on a full, computer-sized piece of paper looks fine, when you decrease your page size to like 5x8, then that 1/2 inch is a lot of valuable space, and it creates way too much white space on your book. Whereas white space is pleasing for the eye, too much of it can be just as bad as too little. When you are indenting the paragraphs on your book, you're going to want to change the paragraph settings in your document so that Word can correct it for them. The problem with this is last night, whereas I found a way to find every single tab in the document, which was 1,372 of them, 968 of those, tabs did not register as tabs. I am not sure why this was, but it took me 2 hours of rewriting, recopy and pasting, and refixing these 968 paragraphs to fix the issue. I'm going to show you guys a video of what I mean by this, and I'm going to explain a little further. So basically I turned this, this paragraph thing on, and I can see all of these, this little arrow is a tab. So all of these are tabs. So when I get rid of them, that's fine. And then when I put the first line indent on, they'll re-indent correctly. The problem is, some of them, it can see it's a new paragraph, but there's no tab. And again, I can see this new paragraph, there's no tab. These lines right here do not register on the ruler. They don't register as first lines, and they're not registering as tabs. So I'm not sure what it is. Now, because I have this thing on, my thought is I can go through. Because when I go like this right here, I'm writing a new paragraph, I hit tab, it registers as it. So my thought is I can just copy and paste all of these and then delete them. And then get rid of all of the tabs at once. And then I guess fix this here. Get rid of all of the tabs at once, and then get rid of all of the line indents. Very roundabout, it's gonna take me a while. Now, I did end up finding an easier way to fix this error than copy and pasting back up. Instead of hitting copy paste, what I just did was I backspaced up to the new indent and tab I had created, and then when I was done with it, I was able to use a computer shortcut command to find all of the tabs at once, which I'll be showing you guys how to do in a second in case you've made this error as well. Now, the main issue I have with this is that if this glitch where not all of the tabs are inserting correctly is on all of my documents, that means I have 90,000 words of Magi 2 to fix. I have 50,000 of Magi 3, and if you guys follow me over from Instagram, you know I have 4 or 5 other full-length whips as well. From novella to novel, I have the average of 30 to 70K for most of them, which means I'm going to need to go all the way through and fix them. So let's hope and pray that the glitch was only on that doc, but if it's not, then I'm going to need to go through all of them. So, what is the correct indent that you should use? Now, there isn't a set standard for this. It actually varies within genres. So if you're writing fantasy, it's going to be different than historical fiction. Historical fiction is going to be different than dystopian, so on and so forth. So the way I would recommend finding the correct indent is to find books in your genre from your bookshelf and take out a ruler and measure the indents per paragraph and then just simply copy it. That's going to be the quickest way because, like I said, there isn't an accepted standard. And if you did use the tab, don't be discouraged. You can fix it. It just takes some time and patience, and it is worth it in the end because you want your book to look good. You want it to look correct. So go ahead and put that effort in. And then learn from me if you are considering writing. Don't use the tab key. Just don't touch it. Don't do it. Don't even look at it. Just rip it out of your keyboard. Maybe don't go that far, but just don't touch the tab key. I'm going to show you guys how I personally fixed this tab issue. This is on a MacBook Air from Microsoft Word. The way I did it was I first pulled up a document. This is an old version of the Magi. It's double-spaced for editing purposes. It works exactly the same for single-spaced documents. What you're going to start by doing is hit this thing right here that looks like a backwards P. I don't know the correct term for it, so I'm just calling it a backwards P. This is going to pull up basically every single invisible move on the document. These little backwards P's are paragraph breaks. The dots between words are spaces, and then right here, this is what we're looking for. These little arrows are tabs, but as you can see, this one right here does not have one. The way I got one to show up was I went back over here, I hit return or enter, then I hit tab. This pulls up a new tab, and then I just backspaced right up to it. Once you have gone all the way through the document and every single one has these, there is a shortcut so you can find all of them at once. That shortcut is Control H. This is going to pull up a sidebar right here. In this sidebar, the command for tab is Shift and the number 6. That's going to pull that little pointy arrow up. From here, you're just going to hit T, just a lowercase t. This is going to find every single tab in the document. That's what these yellow highlights are. Once these are all pulled up, see how this document has 1,382 of them? Instead of individually backspacing, you're going to leave this replace all thing with blank. You're replacing it with nothing. You want to just delete them. Then you hit replace all. This is going to remove every single one in the document. From here, you're going to want to correctly indent it. So you're going to want to hit Control A to select the entire document. Then you're going to go up here and you're going to hit Format. After that, you scroll down to Paragraph. And you get all of these fancy little control things right here. Right now, this is usually unselected, but you're going to have to select mirror indents if it is not selected, so you can have inside, outside here. We're going to ignore this. We're going to go over to special. We're going to hit first line. And then right here, it says by. Right now, it's set to 0.5 inches. That's not what we want. This is the part I was talking about earlier that's going to depend on your genre. Right now, I'm going to do just by 0.25. From here, you're going to hit OK. Every single one, now this got rid of my double space. That won't happen if you have single space, but see how every single one is correctly indented instead of a full tab? And if I want to start a new paragraph after that, I just hit return and it automatically will match it up to it. And then I can just, hit buttons and type here. That fixed every single one in the document. It's a pain to individually fix these tabs, but once you have them in, all you need to do is do a couple of quick shortcuts and problem solve for that document. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope I've enabled you guys to learn from my own mistakes, particularly regarding that last one with the tab key. And if you guys have any tips of your own, particularly with that tab key, please let me know down below. I would love a shortcut to figure it out other than 2 hours of, fixing every single one. But I did get a cool time lapse out of it, so I'll show you guys that at the very end of this video. For now, thank you again for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Give the video a thumbs up and have a great rest of your morning, evening, night, whatever time it is. Have a great day.